Okay, here I'm going to give a quick tutorial on how to create objects in your scene to be illuminated or to be a source of illumination. And we can have two different methods for creating lighted objects. One of them is with using the V-Ray mesh light, and the other is with creating what's called an emissive material. So as you can see in our scene here, we've got a television set, and this stick here is just a very thin tube to represent what could be something like a maybe a fluorescent light tube, or even some kind of modern sleek LED light or something along those lines. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is just do a quick render. Actually, I'm going to make this TV a little bit bigger just so that it's easier to see. So I'm just going to scale it up first and see how that looks. Maybe move it over a little bit. Okay, excuse me. So now that we have these two different objects, the first thing I want to do is to show you how to create a mesh light object. So the only kind of restrictions on a mesh light is the item that you want to turn into a mesh light has to be a component. Okay, so this tube that I created here is just a simple circle that's been push-pulled up into a certain length. Now that I've created it, I turned it into a component. And in the light toolbar over here, we've got the various types of lights we can create. The last one is the convert something to a mesh light. So once we've got the item selected, we can just click on that and we'll get a similar kind of box to certain other V-Ray utilities, like if we were to have created an object with fur on it or things of that nature. So this lets us know that this has now got some kind of parameter attached to the object. It's not just simply a typical model. Okay, so if I were to render this during the day right now, we're going to see that that object will have a bit of a glow to it, and maybe we're not really convinced how bright it is, so we'll just let it finish a quick rendering during the day. But I'm going to change my scene to be an evening or with the sun down kind of scene. The easiest way to make a night view or a night scene of your image isn't to touch the sunlight. It's just to simply change the time of day to the middle of the night. That way the sun and the sky can't accidentally create illumination in your scene. So in my shadow parameters, all I'm going to do is show you that I'm going to change it to 1:30 a.m. And when I go to render that now, you'll see that this is the only source of light in the scene at the time, and that's where we'll get a better indication of how that object is indeed a light source. So once we do that, we can go into the light listing properties of the mesh light, and we can create a light of any intensity just like it was a regular V-Ray light. Okay, so we can change the units, we can make it invisible and so on, and things of that nature. So we can change the color of it if we wanted it to be some kind of like glowing neon or something along those lines. We can easily do that. And if I increase the intensity, now bear in mind that the more you increase the intensity, the light itself will just turn to white, but the light being cast from that object will take on the color that you've assigned to it. So if we were to quickly render it now, you'll see that the glow is still fairly yellow, and the light coming off of it is also quite yellow. Okay, so that's a very quick and effective way to create an illuminating object in your scene. So another situation where you might use something like this is if you download a light model from the 3D warehouse, and it like something like a chandelier that has several little bulbs in it. Hopefully they're all a component that's just been copied throughout the chandelier. So if you were to get down into the component to the level where the bulb is, once you select it, you could apply a mesh light to that object and it will behave like a regular light. Okay, so the second type of illuminating object that I want to show you is the how to make a television set look like it's actually turned on. So if I look back in my rendering, it just looks more like a picture on the wall right now. It doesn't feel like a television. So the way to create the illusion or the feeling of an object having illuminating values to it is we need to use what's called an emissive material. So I'm going to drag an emissive material from the Create panel into my scene, and I'm going to select that face and apply that emissive material to it. And once I've done that, we will see that it turns it into just a big yellow light. So if I were to render it right now, it's just going to be a glowing yellow surface. Okay, so I want to get that picture back in there though. I don't want it to be just a glowing yellow object, so I need to now go into the parameters of the emissive material, and where the color is, I'm going to click on the box and choose bitmap, and I'm going to go to my folder where I've kept that image. I'm going to select it and simply choose that file, and it puts it into the color slot of the object, so that now when I go to render it, the picture is the one doing all the illumination. And currently, since the default size of any newly introduced map in SketchUp is 10 inches, I'm going to have to adjust the size of the map to fit the screen, which shouldn't be too difficult. So I need to go into the SketchUp color matching, and when it was the television, let's see how big it was. It was 3 foot, 2 foot, we'll say 2 feet and a quarter inches, just because it's easier to remember. And let's go back to our scene. Can't get out of here. And now I'm going to set the same parameters on this one. So 2 feet, 0.25. Okay, and hopefully it's centered, but we won't know until we render it whether it's properly. Well, it looks relatively located here, but sometimes the way it renders isn't exactly lined up. But let's cross our fingers, and it turned out okay. So we can see now that the television is also adding light to the scene, and if I want, I could quickly turn off the mesh light and increase the intensity of my TV, and it is now the only thing in the scene producing light. But you will see that it's quite colorful, the amount of illumination coming off of that object. So that's a quick and easy way to create the feeling that a television set is turned on in the room. And we could also use this for any kind of exterior image that we want to use as a background, particularly a night scene. This is very effective. We put the background image outside of our window, not on the window, but a distance away from the window, and we add the emissive material to it so that it indeed glows. So anything in the night scene that is a source of light will actually feel like it's glowing as well. So you can see how the emissive material can be handy. All right, so that's how we can create any object to glow, either with using the emissive material or, as we saw a minute ago, a mesh light object in order to turn it into an actual light.